Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we are going to be doing a review of Resident Evil 8: The Village. Now, like I said, I usually don't do a whole lot of game reviews, but this was a big release, and I played through the entire campaign, and I really, really enjoyed it. So I wanted to go through this and kind of just grade this game and see, kind of where it succeeds and what it's doing. So this will be spoiler free. At least for the most part. Anything that was already in the advertising is fair game. I will say that up front. The advertising did not give away any major, at least not any too major story points. So if you guys do not want to be spoiled on stuff that was already in the advertising, then you can turn off the video now, go play the game, and come back. However, now that those people are gone, we will continue on with this. So just to clarify a few things, you are playing as the same protagonist from Resident Evil 7, Ethan Winter, and this time you are in Europe, more specifically Eastern Europe, Transylvania type feel, definitely with the environments. And I'm not going to give away too much any of the plot motivations or anything like that, but it is a direct continuation of Resident Evil 8, or sorry, Resident Evil 7. So if you guys really like 7, then you're probably going to like this game as well. We also have a few other returning characters from that game, which again have been seen in the advertising, like Chris Redfield and a few others. So if you like that, then you're probably going to go into this game and you're probably going to enjoy it for the most part. They get you right into the action. There's a little bit of a preliminary thing, but after that, you are right in the thick of stuff. So it's not something where you have to trudge through a lot of crap. The opening cinematic is actually very interesting because it feels almost like stop motion, and it's a really good way to foreshadow as well. I really did enjoy the beginning of this game with all the kind of cute little things that they do with the different cutscenes. And when I say that, I mean, kind of a fairy tale like thing. That's what they make this feel like. It's kind of like a very dark and messed up fairy tale. Excuse me. Now, we're going to go through the major aspects of the game, kind of like what I do when I do movie reviews. And with a game like this, first and foremost, one of the top aspects is the story. Now, I will say this. I really, really enjoyed the story. It took a lot of turns I did not expect. And some stuff I did kind of expect, but there was a lot of stuff in here that I was not expecting. And I really, really liked that. They definitely gave you a really good horror vibe. There's sections of the game that very much play differently than others, but the tone really remains fairly constant. It gets creepier at points than others. It gets more actiony at points than others. But I don't think that's a drawback to the game. I think that's just the normal ups and downs of the story and why that kind of fluctuates. So I really enjoyed the story. I'd have to give that a top mark. I'd have to give that an A. It's really, really good. I think that they took it up a notch from Resident Evil 7, which I like. I think whenever you do a sequel to something, you should always take it up a notch. Reducing it doesn't always work, and sometimes going over the top does not always work. But I think they took it to a really good place. And honestly, the werewolf aspect of it did not really bother me that much. It still played and acted like a Resident Evil game, and that's really what I'm looking for the most part, to call it Resident Evil. But still, the story was very, very good. I love the guy who voices Ethan Winters. I don't know the voice actor's name off the top of my head, but he did a really good job, as well as the other voice actors who voice all of the other characters. They did amazing jobs doing their stuff. There wasn't any wooden acting. There wasn't any kind of like over the top scene chewing stuff either. It was all played very, very well, and I liked that. So story was definitely up there. And then the next aspect is the gameplay. Now, the gameplay in this I really, really liked as well. It has a little bit of everything. It's kind of like a mishmash, and different points in the story require you to play things differently. And when you play the game, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But I like the gun combat. The only thing I would say is that I really wish you could upgrade the knife. That's a little bit of a spoiler, I guess, but it's one of the only weapons in the game that you can't really upgrade. You can get a different knife after a point, but the knife that you have at the beginning is basically the same knife that you have throughout the whole game. I would have much rather had it where you could upgrade it or maybe change it up for a machete or a sword or something like that. That would have been kind of interesting. But I understand where they were going with it, and I understand the way that they wanted the game to play. So I get that they didn't want people to rely too heavily on the knife, and they didn't want it to be too OP. So I understand that. But other than that, the gunplay is really good. I like the gunplay. I like the switching system. They do make it very fluid. I love the fact that you can actually pause the game and equip different weapons, and you don't have to rush to do it. It's not like a time thing. That mechanic specifically works very well. Where when you pause the game does not continue. The game actually pauses, which is something that's kind of it's few and far between these days with a lot of games. A lot of games, when you pause, the game will continue to go. So if you're being attacked by enemies and trying to pause to equip a different weapon, a lot of times you'll die. In this game, they thankfully do not do that. They allow the game to pause so you can change to other weapons, because you're really only allowed to have 4 weapons equipped to your hot slots at any given time. One of them is usually the knife, because it's there to break boxes and stuff like that. It's a pain in the ass to go back into the menu and select the knife and then do that. So really it's the knife and 3 of your select guns, and then that's about it. The crafting system, again, like most other Resident Evil games, and more specifically 7, it does very good if you're a scavenger like me. If you're somebody that likes to ravage the map and find everything, then you're gonna really love all the little nooks and crannies and the way that they go about it. There's a nice little system they actually include with the map where buildings that still have items in them for you to find are highlighted in red, and buildings that you have completely searched are highlighted in blue. I like that because it lets you know whether or not there's still things to find around in the world. And the thing is, you're not going to be able to get everything at once. I like that fact where you have to go to different areas to get these different things, and then you can unlock different things in other areas. So there is a fair amount of backtracking, but it's not annoying backtracking, because the other thing that I like about this, for the most part, is that the enemies do not respawn. I hate that in games like this. It's one of the reasons why I really didn't like the new Prey game, is that the enemies will especially in that game, the enemies will respawn. In this, once you kill them, they really don't come back, except for a couple of very specific instances where certain enemies will return, or they'll just keep coming and stuff like that. And most of those are story related. But in this case, I really enjoy that because it doesn't punish you for backtracking. I hate games that do that because it feels more like they're trying to pad it for time than anything else. So as far as the gameplay goes, again, I would probably give it an A+. The stealth is not as easy as some other games, but again, I feel that a lot of other games have made the stealth combat and stuff broken. Ghost of Tsushima had that problem where the stealth combat was pretty broken. In this game, it is not. In this game, it is very good. Again, they're going with the first-person view like Resident Evil 7, which makes a lot of sense. I also like the enemies. The enemies are very varied in the way that they do combat. The boss fights are very unique for the most part. Some of them are a bit too easy, and I'll get to that at the end in terms of like difficulty level on which maybe you should try and play the game. And the other thing is the replayability as well, is that this game, like a lot of other Resident Evil games, has a new game plus where you get to keep your equipment from the previous playthrough, and you can continue and play the story again on a harder difficulty with better weapons, which is really, really it's an extremely good perk to have if you're trying to play through this on harder difficulties. I will say that. You may even want to do 2 playthroughs before you go to the hardest difficulty, because it could get kind of ridiculous. So that's the story, the gameplay, the environments, the visuals. This game is beautiful. I will say that. I am playing it on PC. I don't know if the consoles are significantly downgraded, but I will say this. This game is amazing. It looks great. The cutscenes are amazing. It's one of those games where when you watch the cutscene, it doesn't feel like a cutscene. It feels very organic with the game, and that's not just because they're usually from a first-person perspective. It feels very fluid, and I like that. I don't these days. I don't really care too much for a lot of the games where you can tell that the cutscene was pre-rendered in a different engine and then just inserted into the game, because it looks very different than the world that you've been viewing while you've been playing. I don't necessarily like that aspect, but this game doesn't do that. This game is very fluid. The visuals are really, really good. The character models are very good. Again, the models and stuff for the bosses, very varied. The enemy variants, there's a lot of different enemies in this game, and I mean a lot. Dozens of different types of enemies. Now, some you can kill, and actually most of them you can kill. There's only a couple that you really can't, that you kind of just have to run. You'd kind of just have to run from in certain circumstances. But I really liked the aspects. All the different enemies for the different areas are varied depending on what area they're in. And again, you'll definitely be able to see that. It's not just werewolves. There is a lot of other shit in this game that people would like to see. There's a lot of answers given in this game as well, especially at the end. But I'm not gonna go into that. But like I said, the character design and the level design and all that stuff. And the other thing I want to touch on too that I really really loved about it was the puzzles. And the puzzles for me are one of the funnest parts of these games. They're the parts that I enjoy the most in games like this is figuring out the puzzles, especially for the first time. I love puzzle games in general, but now you add kind of the survival horror aspect to it, and it makes it a bit more interesting. Like, oh, I have to go find this, and then this inserts into this, or maybe I have to examine that or turn that around and find something else in that, or maybe I need to find an item for this thing that's on the other side of the map somewhere. It plays with your memory a lot too. It's one of those things where it's a game where you really do have to remember. Like, oh, I found this house and I need this key for this house, but I don't know where it is. And then later on, you find a key for that house. You have to kind of remember that that house needed that key. Or you can look that up in your journal too if you backtrack far enough. It is a game that does require you to pay a decent amount of attention. It's not necessarily something where you could just kind of like breeze through. It's not one of those grindy type of games where you're just kind of you're just doing stuff just to get XP and money and points. Even though you are doing that sometimes, it definitely doesn't feel like it. But I like that aspect about it, and I like where they're leading the series. And again, I'm not going to get into that at all because that will be getting into spoilers. But just to say, I do like where I see this thing going, even though it could go one way or the other, but I'm curious to see where it goes. But outside of that stuff, I can't really say anything bad about this game. I don't think this game did anything particularly bad. I think that at worst, it did things normal. At the very, very worst. And really, there would only be a couple of things I might be able to pick out to say that. Everything else was either above average or amazing. So I would really have to give this game a 9.5 or a 10 out of 10. Probably a 9.5. The only thing that I would probably take points off for is it is supposed to be Eastern Europe, and it seems like everybody has an American accent, which is a little weird. But that doesn't really take away from the story all that much. But like I said, the environments are varied, the characters are great, the story is great. I really, really enjoyed this game. I'd say if you're a Resident Evil fan, you'll probably like it, especially if you like 7. And if you're just a survival horror fan in general, or a horror fan in general, you'll probably enjoy this just from the visuals and the gothic environments and all the type of stuff that they're doing in this game. But, that's just kind of my opinion on this whole thing. But I want to know what yours is. Have you played Resident Evil 8? Have you not? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Did you play the previous one? Put your thoughts in the comments below. As usual, I like to read them. Hit the bell for notifications. Hit the like button. Subscribe. And remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?